Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. I I am Whitney Wiley. That's not usually the way that goes, huh? That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we have a special guest for you today, and Robert will introduce her in just a second. Robert, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I'm excited for today's episode and introduce people to my friend Chaya. So it's going to be fun.
Cool. So we are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, talking all things leadership. And today, again, we have a special guest, and we're going to be talking about what she does in leadership and the topic of mastery. So, Robert, take it away.
Hi, I'm going to introduce my friend Chaya Peltz. She is a business growth and mindset strategist coach at Spherical Success, where she empowers aspiring entrepreneurs with the tools, strategies, and mindset to build a rock solid foundation for their businesses. This provides them with the skills and confidence to grow and scale their business, creating a life of freedom and flexibility. With that, we'd like to welcome my friend Chaya to our show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me today. It's such a pleasure to see you guys.
It's a pleasure to see you. It's been a while. I mean, we connected a little bit for the show, but we've known each other, since I think 2011.
Is it that long?
Yeah, that long. And so it was great to connect with you and to thank you so much for coming on our show.
And thank you for asking me.
So I have a bunch of questions, but before I get started, I'm going to ask Whitney if she has any opening remarks.
I don't. I'm excited to hear what Haya has to say and to learn more about her. Obviously, well, not obviously, but I don't know you. So except for your bio, looking forward to learning more about you and sharing what you do with our audience. And I know at the end, you've got something that you've been working on that you're going to share with them. So excited for that.
All right, so let's jump right in. So, Haya, tell us a little bit about your journey and what led to you working with the people that you work with.
Oh, okay. Great question. So I worked when I got out of school. I wanted to work in the big corporate world, and I got myself a job there, and I worked there for quite some time. And I built up my skills, the skills that you learn in corporate, which would be communication, leadership, management, all of those really great skills. And I loved it. I really loved it. But after some time, it came to a point where there's this part of me that was always called to help people and I was like deeply influenced by my passion for helping others to unlock their full potential. And that was like a calling. It was really loud calling. And so people used to come all over to me and ask me for advice, even when I was young. People who were older than me would ask me for advice. And I would think that was strange when I was like a little girl. I was like, why are these adults asking me for advice? But I guess I just had like that sign on my back. You know what I mean? so, so my friend said, like, if people are asking you and people are always coming to you, you should actually get certified for that. And which is where I met you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Fantastic.
Yeah, so we went through this fantastic intensive program, and it just felt like home. It just felt right. It felt like, yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be because I loved helping people. But what I used to notice when I was younger was that I came from a very, should I say monochromatic? I don't think that's the right word, but like an environment where everybody was similar to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So the same culture, the same religion, and the same upbringing was very, very similar. In my home, it was a little bit different because my parents were from opposite ends of the world. So I loved that because it gave me more exposure to diversity. And I noticed that a couple things. I noticed that people from opposite sides of the world communicated differently and didn't understand the other person's with inflections or meaning behind the things that they say. So I was like, oh, that's very interesting. And also, people from different cultural backgrounds have a different way of perceiving life and perceiving the world. So I used to think, well, I used to think like there's got to be a better way, because I would think that I would see that some people were living small
Mhm.
and small minded, I would say, in how they viewed the world. And I was like, no, there's more to it. There's more to it. And that led me on my search, my soul search for my own self. And so I was inspired to help other people. And then when I went out into the workforce and I met tons of diverse type of people, I found it fascinating. I was like, oh my God, you do that in your life? And it just fascinated me. And I think the little bit of exposure to the different cultures was what kind of gave me a taste of like, oh, there's more out there. And so I went on this journey to learn about myself and learn about the world and understand like what is out there. And that and it inspired me to help others to see things from other perspectives as well.
Mm.
And so that was sort of what my journey was. It's like, oh, I love helping people have these like paradigm shifts. And even like with my own nieces and nephews, I remember my nephew had one time somebody, you know, how they have like confrontations or challenges with people. And he confided in me and he was upset. And I told him, you know, he was only looking at it one way. And I said, well, what about if you look at it this way? And his eyes just like got bigger than his head. It's like, oh my God. And it was just like a really warm feeling for me to give someone like an opportunity to see something from a different perspective. And it's so liberating sometimes, because sometimes people look at things from a negative lens, right? And if they see another perspective, it's liberating. It's like it frees them to be able to see things in another way. And they're like, oh, I don't have to hold on to that negativity. I could
Mm.
see this in a positive way. Then like they're happier in their life. They have more joy in their life. And that sort of kind of brings me joy. And that was sort of the road that led me towards coaching. And then when I left school, like training for my certification, for our certification for coaching, I didn't know how to build a business. I was like, okay, now what? I have this license. Now what?
Mhm.
And so I had to learn those steps. And then I trained in those steps so that I could help others, because lots of people, especially in the Great Resignation, lots of people were leaving their job or were forced to leave. And and everybody was inspired. I think the COVID lockdown inspired people to say, hey, what can I create in the world? But then they have this something inspiring inside them that they want to present to the world, right? So they're special, unique talents and gifts, but they also don't know where to start. And so I created this program where it guides them through that foundational step and how to get started, how to flesh out the foundational items to get them on the path to create something of their own that could create their legacy and create their business and create something that could support them in becoming abundant.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I wish I would have thought of you when I was doing this. And you get extra points for mentioning two things that we talk about on the show quite often: the Great Resignation and COVID. So
Oh, okay. I didn't know that you talk about it.
yeah, all the time.
And I didn't expect to even talk about it, but it sort of was such a big part of a massive change in the world. And I think of it like, because I used to work in IT when I worked at Merrill Lynch and Bank of America. I worked in IT, right? So I have that IT background. So when the COVID lockdown happened, I was like, everybody was like freaking. Everybody had different reactions. Some people were freaking out, and some people were like, let's utilize this time to make dancing TikTok videos. And I was like, I'm with those people, right? Let's create joy. But the funny thing is I would, as a technology person, I was thinking, oh my God, the entire world is doing a reboot. So, like when you install something new on your phone or on your computer, a new app, you have to shut it down and then reboot it. I was like, this is what's happening. And true to that, the world did not come back to what it was. It was like a massive, completely different world that we came back to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that we love to talk about on our show is how challenges shape people. It shapes our lives and shapes who we become. So what challenges did you face along the way, and how did that shape your work?
So a lot of what I was just sharing was, I think, the biggest challenge for me, and I find that that's a big challenge for lots of people, is that we grow up in an environment, and we grow up in a culture with cultural influences, with societal influences, with influences from authority, right? So our teachers or whoever it is that we look up to, or our mentors, or our parents or grandparents, and generational influences, and all sorts of things. And we actually believe what we're told, and rightly so, because these people love us and they're sharing their wisdom with us, and that makes a lot of sense. But sometimes it isn't true. And what I mean by that is that if you travel to another country and you ask them, oh, what do you do in your life? Like you talk to them about how they live their life, they see things from a very different perspective. I'll give you an example. Like I went to the country Colombia to visit a friend of mine, and I was having a conversation with one of my friend's friends. So the three of us were talking, and she was saying that she was struggling at work because she wanted a promotion. And I said to her, well, why don't you just walk into your boss and tell him, look, I've been working here for so long, I do great work, and I deserve a promotion. She's like, oh, we're not allowed to say that we do great work. And like for an American person, like I never thought that you can't say that. And she never thought that you can. Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is that people see things through through a filter of whatever they were told, whoever, society, culture, country, whatever it is, right? So something so simple as that, we are told things and we take that as the law, and we see the world through that filter. So imagine like taking those filters off and seeing true reality, right? So I think that we spend our whole lives taking those filters off. Mm-hmm. So that's the challenge that I found with myself, and I found with people that I communicate with. And so a lot of time, so I've studied like not only with coaching, but I studied like different modalities of how do you call them? I don't want to call them healing modalities because that sounds like a little woo-woo, but like different things like inner child.
You like woo-woo. Well, I like woo-woo. Robert, not so much.
I'm 50-50 on the woo-woo.
I'm also 50-50 on the woo-woo, because what I love, like real tangible results. And so like inner child work, it's not woo-woo. It's actually getting to the source of like, hey, where did you come up with this filter? And how do we take that away? And how do we see the world in a more expanded way? And now look at the world in more, like I said before, that liberation of like, oh, I don't have to carry that weight of like, oh, that person didn't invite me to that thing. Who cares? Like, right? They must have a reason that's really a good reason. It might not be to diss me. Maybe they can't, or maybe, you know what I mean? Like, so to start thinking in those type of ways is just so liberating. And then you're happier, right? So I find that challenge. And sometimes I do that inner child work with clients, and it's really powerful. They completely change to step into a new person, because they drop that heavy weight off, and they're not carrying it anymore. So it's just liberating. So that's what I find is most challenging. What about you guys?
Well, I have no problem talking about my challenges because they happen, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. But one thing that I find, one of the things that I love about the work that I do and the Whitney and I do together is that typically people, not all the time, but a lot of times, a lot of the challenges they have, I've seen or have experienced them in some way, shape, or form, or have been, have experienced those or seen other people go through those things. And that's how I build the resources that I use for my clients. And one of the things that I am famous for saying to my clients is, hey, use this, it works, because I use it on myself. I don't give anything to my clients that I haven't used myself, because I've had similar challenges. So that's just, how I deal with them. What about you, Whitney?
What I found interesting, Haya, that you said is it just reminds me of a place that I land often, and it's about two things. One is this awareness, the self-awareness, and then the other is about lessons and the stories that we tell ourselves, right? That can sometimes get in the way of us actually learning lessons or implementing the lessons that we've learned. And so, um, you know, taking the time to unpeel, as you said, right, to take off the layers, and to see things as they really are and not necessarily just through the lenses that we have. Because you're right, each of us has very different um, uh, the lenses that we see the same experiences through are very different. So you and Robert went through coaching together. Robert and I went through our master's program together. And while we see some things similarly, our worldviews are different, right? He grew up on the East Coast, I grew up on the West Coast. And then we come together and we can bring our varied experiences, our diverse thought processes together, and then create something totally different than either of us.
Mm.
And so I find that really interesting, and that's what came to me when you were talking.
Oh, I love how you articulated that. And I think about that a lot with couples, because, or any relationship, because what happens is you're bring right, a work relationship, same, but you're bringing your toolbox to the party, and your toolbox has different tools than his toolbox, and together you have this powerhouse of a team, and that's what you share out with the world. I love that.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things about leaders and their willingness, if they are willing, which is what we talk about here a lot, right? Is that you can be in a position of leadership and not be an effective leader if you don't take the time to understand who you are, how you interact with other people, how you help them to be better, how you help them to use the tools in their toolbox better, right? And as long as that's sort of the perspective that you have, then it helps you to move your team forward and towards the goals and the vision that your team ultimately has.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And this is a question this is one of those questions that is exactly the same every single time we ask it, because we're all about leadership here on the show. So what's your leadership philosophy?
My leadership philosophy is empowerment. Is empowerment. When I was a manager, and and in corporate, I found that the most fun I had was when the person who was coming, like the person who was working for me, came with that desire to excel, right? They came with that, oh, I want to do my job great, right? And I want to learn and I want to grow. So when they come with that passion, I find it's just so much fun to like give them all the tools that they need, and empower them to do what they need to do without me having to hold their hand, right? I mean, of course, day one, you do, right? You're like, okay, this is how it goes. But to let them take that and run with it and not be a hovering leader, but let them grab the reins and fly, right? Trust, if you have that trust with them and you give them what they need to empower them, it's just like we say, teach a man to fish, right? That
Mhm.
whole thing. And I just found those times, like when I had people working for me who stepped up, and I gave them like, okay, this is what you need to do. Go do it. I'm not watching you. Can then come. It was just like a happy place to work in those occasions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And I remember like my nephew, when he was little, he would confide in me about stuff and in school and everything like that. And I remember I would like give him some guidance because he was young, and kids in school can be tough and they could be mean, you know, and I would just give him like guidance, and then one day he came to me and he said, this happened in school and this is what I did. And can I share, you know, can I vent? Can I share with you? And I'm like, I was just listening. And I just was like going to cry, because he took all of that talking that we talked about when he was younger, and he implemented it better than I could have dreamed about, because he didn't, like, somebody it started up with him or offended him, or I don't remember the story, but I just remember that the measurement was even. Like, he didn't put more force on the person, and he didn't put too little. He faced it just in the right measurement, and he felt so confident that he was able to take care of himself. And I remember just in my mind, I was like, fly, baby, fly. You know, I was just so happy. And that's what I love about coaching. That's why I think you and I really enjoyed our training, because it's about teaching people to go on their own, right? We don't want to create dependency. We want to create them to be able to fly.
Can,
Absolutely.
can I ask a question, Haya? Did you get that from people that you worked for, or did you come to that because people that you worked for didn't give you that and you're like, that's what I want to do for people who are working for me?
Hmm. I never thought deeply into it, like if that would be the reason. It probably has some influence, but yeah, it probably has some influence, because for me, it just like in my internal being, it feels right. It's like I want people, like I don't want to be like, I want to be empowered, and so I want to empower others. And I'm sure that, you know, there were moments where I wasn't that way, with people who I kind of felt like not trusting that they are going to take the reins, right? Like I kind of grew up with um, that overprotectiveness, right? Overprotect. Like, okay, do you know how to do it? Like, give it too many instructions, and so maybe I didn't enjoy that as much. So it might have had an influence. Now that you bring it up, totally, yeah,
It's funny how those things shape us. You know,
yeah,
I got into leadership because I didn't have good leaders. It's like, what, when Whitney and I went to school, we were like, we learned that there are tons of resources out there for new managers and new leaders. Very few. One of the things that we say on the show is the least you can do is get a book, right? or ask somebody for help. But it's amazing how those things that happen to us
yeah,
really shape our work and what we do with other people.
yeah. I mean, totally, and it's very interesting because, like, even culturally, you said like ask for help. I remember that, because in IT back in, I don't know how they do it now, but when I was there, they would hire people from India or Singapore, or, you know, those countries to support the IT piece, right? The building of we would do the design and they would do the build. And they were not allowed to disagree with the boss or ask questions, or, so it was very frustrating for me because I would be like, there was a time difference, right? So it was New York time and then India time. So like when I would leave the office, we would have a meeting and say, okay, so do you have everything that you need to have this on my desk in the morning? And they, yes, Chaya, because they're not allowed to say no. I didn't know that. I thought that they had what they needed, right? And they come in the next day and it's not done. So they're not even allowed to tell me I don't have what I need to be efficient for you. So I felt like sad about that, I felt sad about that because communication is such a powerful tool. And when it's used correctly, there's flow and there's efficiency and there's movement. And then that brings like openness and joy. Then there's time for joy, right? You don't have to go back and say, okay, go back and do it again because you didn't, right? There's time for joy now. So that would be sad.
Excellent. So we're getting close to the end here. I have 2 more questions. And the first one I'll ask now is what's on the horizon for you?
Oh, so I have a program that helps people, like I said earlier, with building the foundation of their business and getting that really clear and getting started, right? Getting on their feet. And what I found is that the mindset piece of the mindset shifts and the paradigm shifts that happen, like we were just talking this whole time about seeing things differently and liberating yourself from these and removing these filters. And that I find that every human being needs that piece. Every human being goes through that, whether it's in business and they get stuck and they can't move forward, or whether it's in their personal life or in their relationship or just them on their own, right? There's just the way that they sometimes don't even realize that they have these filters until they bump into people and there's bumping happening, right? So I love that piece, and I work on myself every day from a mindset perspective, and I try to learn and grow in that area on a daily basis. So I have created I have created a new program that is just going to be about mindset. So as a precursor to that, I've created a workbook, and it's people could sign up for free to get the workbook, and it's a precursor. It gives you a little bit of an inside view about what type of things that we would talk about in the course. And it's just on its own, it's very helpful because if you go through the workbook, it would help you to move through some limiting beliefs that people have. We all have them. So if anybody wants to grab a copy, it would be Spherical Success /inner game, right? Because mindset is the inner game, right? Success is 80% mindset and 20% strategy.
Fantastic. All right. Whitney, anything you'd like to add before I wrap things up with our last question? Okay. I think you're
muted. Oh, look at you. You got on the thing. Thank you.
Is that correct?
That is.
I just want to make sure that was correct. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed listening. I hear some things that I think could create some synergy, and I'm gonna reach out to you afterwards. So.
Fantastic. All right. Well, my last question is about one of our guiding principles. So Whitney and I created a program. We call it Simple Leadership. So one of the guiding principles is mastery. So the question I want to ask you is, what are some of the things you'll be looking to master as you continue your work?
Time management. Management, because that is really the key to success. And I didn't really know this beforehand, because when I worked in corporate, you were on their time, right? And then when you came home, you just were tired. You just want to eat dinner, relax with your family, and just do your things, right? So there was no you didn't have to regulate yourself with time. And when you are a business owner, when you are an entrepreneur, it's so important to prioritize the things that are the most important things for you. And what you learn is in entrepreneurship that the tasks that are revenue generating are the most important things for you to do. And the other tasks are delegatable. Am I saying that right? Delegatable. And so prioritizing that, but not just from that perspective, because that is critical to being successful as an entrepreneur. And I didn't realize how much until I started to study more about business and entrepreneurship. But even more so, I find what's important, the mastery that I want to achieve is more of my morning routine, my night routine, my sleep routine, make sure that you get the amount of sleep that you need. And so when you are having the discipline in those areas and in your time in those areas and for the entrepreneurship piece, that creates time freedom for you, which creates all the other, which it lends itself to create to the other freedoms as well.
Oh, fantastic. That's fantastic. I always learn so much when I have these conversations with you. So this has been a real pleasure for me. Whitney, any closing thoughts before we wrap things up?
Yeah, I love that piece about time management. And, my philosophy is that when we master our mornings, we master our days. Master your days, you master your life, right? And then that mornings become mornings and nights. And so, the way we start our day, the way we end our day is so important. And as leaders, setting the examples for those that we lead becomes huge. And so, as coaches and people who are working with, high potential people, leaders, etc., helping them to do that is crucial, right? Yeah. And is sort of the impetus I have for doing this work is wanting for leaders to be the best that they can be, so that no one has to work for the kinds of leaders that I have had to work for. Right? Right? So, I'm just honest here. And I know I've worked for some really great leaders, but I've worked for some not so much. And so, pre- preventing other people from having to have those experiences.
Yeah, we've all been
that awareness around how we're managing our time, managing our energy is huge.
Yeah. So thank you for adding that piece to it, because I neglected to say that piece. It's not just the time management, but it's that with the morning routine, it's the how you set the tone for the day. So if you're starting the day with some mindset things, that's going to set the tone for a more positive day. And so
Absolutely.
sets the tone, and it's when you get into that routine, you start to think more positive, you start to be reacting more positively with the people around you. And so thank you for adding that piece in, because that was really important. That's a really important part of that piece. Thank you.
My pleasure. It was a team effort.
You
got the ball rolling.
We're reading this mind.
Absolutely.
I got you.
And I'd like to add that what I do a little differently is I try to do that when I go to sleep. I try to add that, that this is what I've learned today. This is what I'm more successful at today than I was before. So that while I'm sleeping, it's baking in.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think both are hugely important, right? How we start our day, how we end the work day, transition from work to life, if you will, or from work to non-work, and then how we end the day in terms of what you have on your brain, the kinds of things. Like I try to make sure that my final thoughts at the end of the day are positive, that they're productive, that they are that they are life giving and life affirming. So I don't watch like violent stuff. I don't watch the news right before going to bed, any of that stuff, because I want a clean spirit when I go to bed and as I'm falling asleep. So usually I'm listening to like some guided meditation or something that moves me in that direction. And I just think it helps overall.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Chaya, thank you so much for spending some time with us. It's been a pleasure. Any closing thoughts before Whitney takes us out?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been just a wonderful conversation. We should do this on a weekly, like just get on a call and just brainstorm together, because this was just so much fun.
Oh,
we can do that. We'll create our own little mastermind.
Fantastic. All right, Whitney, take us out.
Cool. So, hi, I do want to give you an opportunity. You did mention, and I'll pop this up again. You did mention that you have a workbook, spiritualsuccess.com/inner game. So she is inviting you to get that. Run, don't walk, to go and get that. And then if someone wanted to reach you, just mention how they could do that.
So on the bottom of the screen, it says support@sphericalsuccess.com, or they can DM me on LinkedIn or Facebook.
Awesome. Awesome. So the links are there for you. You can get them there. Chaya, again, thank you so much for joining us, sharing about yourself and what you do. And again, we are here, Robert and I, on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Robert, if someone wanted to reach out to you and work with you, please tell them how they could do that.
Yeah, they can reach out to me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can just go to my website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, and fill out that little contact form. Tell me what you would like to work on, and we can have a discovery call and really talk about how I can help you reach your goal, or come up with strategies for any challenges that you're having.
Awesome. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do so at shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site, and we can schedule an exploratory call and talk about how I can help you. The other thing I want to mention before we go is if you would like to be a guest on the program, please reach out. You can reach out to either Robert or I and let us know you're interested in being a guest. We, again, are talking about leadership, and you tie it to one of the pillars of simple self-awareness, intentionality, mastery, purposefulness, leverage, or energy. We would love to have you on and talk about what you do. So with that, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So
thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye now.